On this Thursday night, get ready, Canada. An election is about to be called. When we'll vote?
We may not know the final results of the election on election night.
The Liberals who think this is a bad idea. Plus, is a campaign during the fourth wave safe?
There could be more transmission of COVID as a result of the election.
The third dose. The U.S. is on the verge of approving the booster shot. Plus, a long life of taking it nice and slow. The milestone for Nova Scotia's revered reptile.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. There was always the threat of a federal election. Now it's very real. Global News can confirm that the Liberal government will call for a vote on September 20th. Let's bring in our Ottawa Bureau Chief, Mercedes Stephenson. Mercedes, there has been so much speculation about this election. Why is Justin Trudeau calling it now, and how will the process unfold?
Well, Robin, on Sunday morning, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will walk across the grounds at Rideau Hall to ask Mary Simon, the new Governor-General, to dissolve Parliament, triggering the 2021 federal election. Constitutional experts say that the Governor-General will grant Trudeau's request. That's because there has not been an election in recent months and no other party is trying to form government. The campaign will be 36 days, the shortest time allowed under federal law. That puts Election Day on Monday, September 20th. And while this is a snap election, it's hardly a surprise. The Prime Minister had openly stated 2021 would be an election year, even while denying that it would be his party that would trigger Canadians going to the polls. The Prime Minister's decision to launch a campaign means he has decided now is the Liberals' best chance of getting a majority. Justin Trudeau had to run a political calculation here. Go now and risk voters' wrath for triggering an election in a fourth wave and when COVID-19 numbers are growing, but the Liberals have good and not great numbers, or wait and potentially lose control of the narrative, handing timing of the election to the opposition and running the risk of the public mood and economy souring. The Liberals will likely frame this campaign as needing to seek a mandate from Canadians to spend more money and manage the challenges that they will argue were unforeseen in a pre-pandemic world.
Is there any sense, Mercedes, that what the Liberals will focus on, and is everyone on board in that party with calling an election?
So while we haven't seen the Liberal platform, we can take a few things that we know from recent spending announcements, the spring budget, and the decision to go to an election now. Childcare and social programs will likely feature prominently, but the ballot box question the Liberals want is who Canadians trust to govern through the pandemic and an endorsement for their pandemic recovery plans. Typically, going to the polls during a time of crisis favors the incumbent, but some senior Liberals are worried about potential voter blowback. This will be a hard-fought election no matter what, Robin, with about a dozen key ridings where only 1 to 2 points could decide races. Getting out the vote will matter, but starting on Sunday, the Prime Minister will have to answer the question of why this is in Canadians' interests and not just the Liberal parties. Robin?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes. The fourth place party in the House of Commons took the first shot at getting its ideas to voters. Jagmeet Singh launched a 115-page policy document today, laying out the framework for what New Democrats will campaign on once the writ drops. Abigail Bimman breaks down what's new and what's déjà vu.
We are committed to making them better for people, for workers, and
Jagmeet Singh dropped the heart of his party's future platform in the place where he spent part of his childhood, Newfoundland and Labrador.
That's the vision that we have for Canada, making the ultra-rich pay their fair share so we can invest in people.
There is a lot packed into the 115-page plan, but a lot is not new. Singh campaigned on national pharmacare and dental care, more affordable housing, and a wealth tax in 2019 too. His party lost 15 seats. But that was before the pandemic.
That's what we're hoping people realize, that all the things we talked about are the things that people need now more than ever.
The key challenge for the NDP is that even though you have a similar package or similar measures or things that people may have heard before, you have to repackage it and sell it in the context of a post-pandemic recovery.
This time around, the call for more taxes goes further. There's a repeat of the 2 percentage point boost for top bracket earners to 35%. Now, the 1% wealth tax for the ultra-rich applies to anyone who earns $10 million, down from $20. And a new COVID-19 profit tax would slap a 15% tax on corporations with pandemic windfalls.
What we know from public domain polling is the wealth tax is incredibly popular.
The action plan does have new ideas, some triggered by the pandemic, including a call to end for-profit long-term care and bring in national standards.
Frankly, it should be a key election issue for everyone, given the fact that, we lost 14,000 residents in long-term care in those first two waves alone.
So much packed into a pre-platform document, but there is something noticeably missing: clear costing for many very big promises. The party says that will come in an eventual campaign, and Jagmeet Singh had some non-policy news to announce as well Thursday. He and his wife are expecting their first child. Robin?
Abigail Bimman in Ottawa. Thanks, Abigail. Canada is headed into an election just as Canada's top doctor confirms we're in the fourth wave of the pandemic. Nationwide, there are now more than 13,000 active infections. That's more than double the number 2 weeks ago. People aged 20 to 39 make up the majority of new cases, and the number of people getting severely ill is starting to climb. In the last week, patients being treated in hospital for COVID-19 jumped 12%. Dr. Theresa Tam says the vast majority of cases and hospitalizations involve people who are not fully vaccinated. Despite the rise, she says there are ways to ensure the election is safe. As Jamie Mauracher reports, some public health experts are skeptical.
Despite mounting fears about the impact of a fourth wave, Canada's top doctor is confident a federal election is safe.
There's a lot that's been learned about how to make these kind of voting spaces, if you like, safe.
Elections Canada has been preparing for this possibility for months. Natasha Gauthier told Global News part of its top priority is to
deliver an election that is as safe as possible for voters, for Election Canada's staff, for poll workers.
Adopting public health measures such as providing workers with personal protective equipment, masks and face shields, implementing social distancing guidelines, using plastic barriers and one volunteer per table, and there will also be hourly cleaning. For voters, there will be hand sanitization stations and a fresh new miniature pencil for each person, about 16 million of them. But mask requirements will vary province to province. Infectious disease specialist Anna Banerjee says in Alberta, which has eased all COVID-19 restrictions, in-person voting stations could lead to super spreader events.
Unless we're ready to put back the public health measures in place, and I think that there could be more transmission of COVID as a result of the election.
Then there's the issue of where to place polling stations. Ontario seems torn, while Manitoba's premier said schools will be off limits in his province. Dr. Banerjee agrees.
Right now, we're trying to bring the kids back in school. Do we want a whole bunch of adults being in the school during a fourth wave?
Experts say mail-in ballots may become the safest and most popular option. Elections Canada anticipates 5 million people will vote this way versus just 54,000 in 2019.
We may not know the final results of the election on election night.
In Newfoundland and Labrador, spring vote counting mail-in ballots led to results being delayed days.
How y'all doing?
Finally, candidates will also have to get used to new forms of canvassing. In St. John's Thursday, NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh highlighted what experts hope COVID campaigning won't look like: maskless while making close contact with groups of people. Instead, parties will need to find new ways to win over voters, ones that keep everyone safe. Jamie Mauracher, Global News, Toronto.
The BC government is making COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for long-term care workers. That province's top doctor says the move is needed to help protect against highly transmissible new variants.
Even when resident immunization is high, as it is across the board in facilities in this province, we have seen transmission from unvaccinated staff, and it has reinforced the need for protection.
Henry says workers must be fully vaccinated by October 12th. The new order also applies to volunteers and personal service providers who go into long-term care homes. As of today, they cannot enter the homes if they're not vaccinated. The list of Canadian universities requiring vaccines on campus is growing longer by the day. Today, Carleton, Queen's, and the University of Guelph in Ontario became the latest schools to announce that all staff and students must be vaccinated against COVID-19 to be on campus this fall. One school bucking the trend is the University of Calgary. It's encouraging staff and students to get the shot, but says vaccines and masks will not be mandatory on campus. Anyone hoping to go to a Winnipeg Jets home game this coming season must be fully vaccinated and wear a mask. The team's parent company says the rules apply to arena employees, staff, and fans. For now, children who don't qualify for COVID-19 vaccines will be allowed to attend, but they'll have to put on a mask. Canada is once again being hit hard by summer heat. Nearly 15 million Canadians are under heat warnings. Parts of Newfoundland and Labrador and all of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island are dealing with scorching temperatures. In southern Ontario and Quebec, hot and humid conditions could make it feel like 40 degrees. And on the west coast, British Columbia is baking. The province is in its third heat wave this summer. Today is expected to be the hottest day of BC's heat wave, and there's concern the potentially record-breaking temperatures could lead to more heat-related illnesses and deaths. Jennifer Palma joins us now from a popular Vancouver beach. Jennifer?
Robin, all day we've seen British Columbians just trying to beat the heat. Right now their focus is just to try and survive it.
We're going to our air-conditioned hotel room.
Officials recommend doing errands and activities before 10 in the morning or after 4 to beat the heat. And for summer fun at Vancouver's beaches, tennis and volleyball games got underway early as people walked and rolled to stay cool.
I bought a portable air conditioner for my home.
It doesn't bother me so much. I'm from Australia.
I just stayed in my parents' air-conditioned room all day. We love lemonade stands. We did it yesterday, and we're going to do another one today.
The oppressive heat dome that sat over BC in June left a grim reminder of how serious and deadly extreme heat can be. BC saw 569 heat-related deaths, many of them elderly residents living alone, and long wait times for emergency calls. Here, in a region where few homes have air conditioning. This time, emergency health workers are deployed where they're most needed, and hospital managers are working in emergency rooms to help out. Emergency Management BC is opening cooling centers and offering transportation to access them, and there are more emergency phone operators to handle increased call volumes through the weekend. Health officials are concerned about this heat.
Been through this twice now in terms of these alerts coming. Cooling centers are available. The awareness has been raised. Our hope is that we do not see the same type of mortality and morbidity that is associated with heat events like this.
And for those who want to cool down but aren't sure how, in Vancouver, cooling centers and misting stations have been set up to help keep everyone safe. The heat, a particular concern for those living on the streets.
We are heading out into alleys, into the community. We're handing out water bottles. We're handing out cold water, hats, sunscreen, lip balm, these survival items that folks need to endure this heat.
Officials are also reminding parents and pet owners to not leave children or pets in cars and to check on seniors and those who may need extra help. The peak of the heat is here, and while the next few days might be a little bit cooler, there's still going to be scorchers, and the heat is expected to last throughout the weekend. Robin?
Jennifer Palma in Vancouver. Thanks, Jen. Stifling heat has a grip on much of southern Europe. The Italian Health Ministry has issued warnings about high temperatures and humidities for at least 15 cities, including Rome. Cooling stations have been set up near popular tourist sites in the capital. In Sicily, authorities say the mercury climbed to 48.8 degrees Celsius, close to the city of Syracuse. It's the highest temperature ever officially documented in Europe, but the World Meteorological Organization must validate it to become an official record. Those high temperatures continue to drive deadly wildfires, mainly in the southern regions of Sicily and Calabria. Long spells of drought are also being blamed. Officials say the fires are now under control, but at least 4 people have died. The speed at which the Taliban is advancing toward Afghanistan's capital is stoking criticism about the U.S. decision to withdraw its troops, the last of which are set to leave by the end of the month. Tonight, there are reports the Taliban has now taken Kandahar. Earlier, the Taliban seized 2 key cities, Herat, the 3rd largest city, and Ghazni, which is about 130 kilometers away from Kabul. The U.S. is encouraging its citizens to leave the country and has reduced staff at its embassy to a core diplomatic presence. The Department of Defense is moving more personnel to the airport in Kabul to help get embassy staff out.
We expect to draw down to a core diplomatic presence in Afghanistan in the coming weeks. Let me be very clear about this. The embassy remains open, and we plan to continue our diplomatic work in Afghanistan.
The Taliban has now taken over 12 provincial capitals in less than a week. Government forces are withdrawing, moving to protect Kabul. But there are mounting fears militants will storm and take over the capital. No more second thoughts about giving out third shots. Coming up, why the U.S. is now approving another COVID-19 vaccine dose. Plus, freezer turn, the pilot who landed in trouble to get ice cream. Regulators in the United States are set to approve COVID-19 booster shots for some people with immune system disorders. Research suggests 2 doses may not be enough to protect certain immunocompromised groups. And with the Delta variant circulating, a third shot is now recommended. As Jackson Proskow reports, the same could soon be in store for the general public in both the U.S. and Canada.
With hospitals once again stretched to capacity and with a growing body of research into the contagiousness of the Delta variant, the U.S. is moving to recommend an extra dose of vaccine for those with compromised immune systems.
We've been working to identify how best to provide increased protection to these vulnerable people who are disproportionately impacted by severe outcomes due to COVID-19.
A recently published study by researchers in Toronto found a third dose given to organ transplant recipients was the best way to increase protection in those who may not develop an immune response after 2 doses. Canada is studying whether to formally approve the practice as well.
We will look at the immunocompromised group separately from the general population.
Booster shots are a complicated issue. An estimated 1 million Americans have already decided to self-medicate and have lied about vaccination status in order to receive an unauthorized extra shot. Dr. Anthony Fauci believes it's only a matter of time until boosters are in fact recommended for everyone.
We believe sooner or later you will need a booster for durability of protection.
The concern is the vaccines may lose their potency over time or may not be as effective against the Delta variant. But as the gulf between vaccinated and unvaccinated nations grows wider, the World Health Organization has called for a pause on boosters.
We cannot and we should not accept countries that have already used most of the global supply of vaccines, using even more of it.
Epidemiologists agree, believing the better way to control the pandemic is to reach as many unvaccinated people as possible first.
It makes a lot more sense. It benefits everyone much more to really drive down the numbers overall that are susceptible to infection.
Those pleas may not stop the trend toward boosters, with the U.S. and other wealthy nations already holding potential future doses in reserve. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
To mandate or not to mandate? Still ahead, the vaccination question facing employers in a 4th wave. Rather than waiting for politicians to take the lead, a growing number of workplaces across North America have announced vaccination mandates. And Gaviola explains why more Canadian companies and organizations are increasingly taking matters into their own hands.
This Toronto-based firm requires employees who come into the office or attend work events to provide proof of vaccination.
Looking at the broader context of the pandemic and now the Delta variant, we really felt that the first thing that we had an obligation to do was protect our entire team.
The Human Resources Department manages the vaccination policy, ensuring privacy and making accommodations for those who haven't gotten their jabs. The number of employers across Canada requiring proof of vaccination is growing and includes several post-secondary institutions, mortgage platform Pinch Financial, as well as a handful of Bay Street law and accounting firms. The Winnipeg Jets just announced that its home games will be sold to full capacity and all employees, event staff, and guests must provide proof of full vaccination.
The federal government announced a digital vaccine program designed for international travel, set to be available in the fall, and Quebec is going ahead with its vaccine passport, set to go live September 1st. But leaders in Ontario and Alberta have said they're not going down that route.
Even if a province decides not to go down the route of having a vaccine passport, it's critical that they still provide the infrastructure and the tools for businesses who do want to have them for their specific business operation.
With so much regional uncertainty thrown into the mix and medical experts warning about the dangers of the fourth wave, legal experts say it's clear why private companies aren't waiting for politicians to act.
There's been a shift in the landscape in terms of not only the public viewpoint on vaccine certificates, but also, I would suggest, the legal viewpoint as well.
Earlier in the pandemic, requiring proof of vaccination was viewed as the riskier prospect legally, but now the calculation has changed.
It's unfortunate that it's left a private sector to lead the way. And I would really encourage our politicians to take a look at these things and lead with courage. And sometimes these decisions are hard to make.
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Celebrating the longest living gopher tortoise. Up next, Gus comes out of his shell for his birthday.
If you get regular exercise, have a controlled diet, and are loved by millions, it's pretty much the recipe for longevity for anyone.
Some words of wisdom on the 99th birthday of Gus, the gopher tortoise. He's a living legend at the Nova Scotia Museum of Natural History. Born and raised in Florida, Gus has called the museum home since 1942. Due to the pandemic, there's not a big party this year, but in 2022, when Gus turns 100, the museum is planning a party for the ages. What would you do for an ice cream cake? Well, a Saskatchewan man's trip to a Dairy Queen ended with a criminal charge. This helicopter was seen landing in a busy parking lot in Tisdale. People were shocked to see a man exit the chopper, enter the Dairy Queen, and leave with a cake. Police have charged the 34-year-old pilot with 1 count of dangerous operation of an aircraft. Oh boy. And that is Global National for this Thursday night. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, Your Canada is a National Historic Site, the Halifax Public Gardens, founded in 1836. If you'd like to share your favorite part of this vast country, please send your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.